Testing, 1, 2, testing, 1, 2. It's good. Let me make sure I'm on airplane mode. Perfect. Yeah. Please put your, when you're filming the event tonight, please put your phone on silent, or preferably airplane mode is best. But if some of you are important folks and you need to stay connected, I understand. All right. You good, Zoran? Stretch go? Perfect. This thing works perfect. It's so good to have you all here. Truly, thank you. I'm humbled and I'm so glad you're here. I hope that tonight I can give you some new perspective on a lot of things you might already know. And you might be surprised at how much this fresh-faced young American can maybe teach you a few things you didn't know about Nikola Tesla. So this is Tesla's words, subtitled A Stunning Utopia of the Future. That's the cover for the audiobook. And Nikola Tesla spoke to newspapers from the late 1880s, pretty much up until when he passed away in the early 1940s. So we really have many, many decades of his wisdom, where he's speaking to newspapers and magazines, talking about everything you can imagine, philosophy, predictions for the future, his personal thoughts, and we have a lot to learn from Nikola Tesla. So my new book, Tesla's Words, is free for schools as a PDF worldwide. Any educator can contact me and I'll pass them the PDF right along. A lot of people have told me that I'm absolutely insane for doing this and that I should not do this and that I should try to sell my books to schools, but they don't understand. I need to remove all obstacles to get Nikola Tesla into schools because he belongs into schools. We do not learn about his name in America in the educational system. There's other educational systems around the globe where Nikola Tesla is not represented, and I'm working to change that. So I'm giving it to free. It's absolutely free for schools. Kids can read it on their iPads, tablets, cell phones. Personally, I cannot stand to look at a screen for more than 20, 30 seconds, but the kids are glued to them, so there we go. Now, one of the biggest things I want to impress upon you and everyone is that genius is not an accident. It's not just genetics. It's not just a stroke of luck. It's hard work, constant work, consistency, and a mindset of optimism. We can all learn from Nikola Tesla to improve our own lives and improve the lives of those around us. Nikola Tesla worked basically from the time he got out of bed until when he went to sleep. And even after that, he told one American magazine that he would toss around, unable to sleep at night, trying to figure out the problems of these difficult engineering tasks that he was figuring out. So if he didn't have that mindset of constant work and the optimism that he will be able to find the solutions to those problems, he might have never discovered alternating current. He might have never been a critical pioneer in the fields of radio and X-ray technology. And Pupin understood this too. It's hard work and consistency and the optimism to know that if you just try and focus and keep at it, you will discover genius. So I'm going to give you some examples of Nikola Tesla's optimism. Here are 3 quotes of Tesla optimism. Meanwhile, the cheering lights of science and art, ever increasing in intensity, illuminate our path, and the marvels they disclose, the enjoyments they offer, make us measurably forgetful of the gloomy future. Now, when you tell people to be optimistic these days, a lot of the times they say, why? There's no reason to be optimistic. If you're optimistic, you're not being realistic, and you should be realistic. So I want to say that if you're being optimistic, that's not about, ignoring reality. It's not about being unrealistic. And Nikola Tesla understood this too, because at the end of the quote, he acknowledges that the world is gloomy. So optimism is not about ignoring reality. It's about facing reality, facing terrible, awful things in this world and looking them square in the face so that you can work to fix them. This is maybe a very American sentiment. I think we rubbed off on old Nicky while he was living in the United States for so long. If people would select a life work compatible with their temperaments, the sum total of happiness would be immeasurably increased in the world. So Tesla tells us to work hard, but he also says, choose your passion. Whatever your passion is, discover that, explore that, and that's how you as an individual are going to contribute to society to make this world a better place. This is a phenomenal quote. He says, "We are whirling through endless space with an inconceivable speed. All around us, everything is spinning, everything is moving, and everywhere is energy." There must be some way of availing ourselves of this energy more directly. This is another great example of his optimism, because he doesn't know how he's going to find this. And he eventually found it, but he just knew there has to be a way, and if I just stay focused, I will find the solution to this problem. So there are a lot of fake quotes from Nikola Tesla circulating on the internet. I don't want to dive into this too much, because in the spirit of Tesla optimism, I want to focus on the positive and not the negative. And generally, it doesn't really matter if you're an American or you're Serb. If I tell you your favorite Tesla quote is fake, you instantly hate me. So I'm not going to do that too much tonight, but we're going to look at one quote, and I want you to help me investigate, okay? All right, are you ready? Are you ready to help me investigate? Tell me if this is real or fake. Did Nikola Tesla say this, or did he not say this? Death does not exist, and with that very knowledge, the fear of it disappears. And to paraphrase the next paragraph, he says, when we die, we turn into light, and that is the original state from which we came. So, true or false, did Nikola Tesla say this, or is it a fake? What do you think? Raise your hand if you think it's true. Did Nikola Tesla say this? Raise your hand. True? Raise your hand for true. Raise your hand for false. Raise your hand if you have no idea. A couple of people. So Nikola Tesla never said this. It's a very popular quote, but he actually never said this. AAP fact-checked in Australia. They contacted me. They're one of the oldest and most reputable fact-checking institutions in the world. Very, very happy that they did this, but they asked me about this quote, and they asked me what I thought about it. So I gave them a bunch of reasons why I was positive it was not real. They also contacted the museum here in Belgrade, and Belgrade agreed it is not based in fact. You can find this quote, you can find this article. It's called Nikola Tesla's Death and Light, quote, dims under closer scrutiny, published in 2020. You can read the rest of the article if you like. But in the spirit of Tesla optimism, in the spirit of that optimism, I don't want to focus on all the bad quotes, because there's so many real quotes that I know for a fact are true. I want to focus on them. So I'm going to give you about a dozen quotes from Nikola Tesla that I know for a fact are absolutely true. And these are quotes that I think define who the man is and why we all like him. These are quotes that define why we're all here in this room right now, right? There we go. For ages, this idea has been proclaimed in the consummately wise teachings of religion, probably not alone as a means of ensuring peace and harmony among men, but as a deeply founded truth. The Buddhist expresses it in one way, the Christian in another, but both say the same. We are all one. Now that's a marvelously tolerant and advanced quote, in my opinion, considering that it came from over 100 years ago. And I also think it's very wonderful that Nikola Tesla was very devout Orthodox Christian. He spent his days filled and consumed with thoughts of the Christ, and yet he could do that while still fully respecting and adoring the religion of others, and respecting the traditions of others, and respecting the people who practice those traditions. So, and even more fun to me is that he said we are all one, because this sounds like lyrics from Jefferson Airplane. It sounds like something the Beatles said, right? Paul McCartney might have said we are all one, maybe John Lennon, maybe Jimi Hendrix. So it sounds like something from that era, and yet here it is Nikola Tesla saying it. But it turns out that's actually a very, very old idea that goes much back further than Tesla or anyone else from that era. And even 100 years prior, Benjamin Franklin said, "We are one." On this penny he designed, this was very early American money. This is a penny designed by Benjamin Franklin in the city of Philadelphia. It says, "We are one." And we have quotes telling us what Nikola Tesla thought about Benjamin Franklin, believe it or not. When I found this, I was overwhelmed because it's just interesting when Nikola Tesla talks about other scientists and other explorers of ideas that he liked that were from my country. He said, "The scientists from Franklin to Morse were clear thinkers and did not produce erroneous theories. The scientists of today think deeply instead of clearly, and one must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane." So I wanted to show you this quote because usually when it's seen on the internet, it's chopped up into pieces and you only get part of the quote. So the entire quote continues to say, "Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality." This next quote is brilliant because it sounds like ancient Roman Stoic philosophy. So I consider Tesla a Stoic philosopher. He says, "Centuries ago, men have lived, have thought, discovered, invented, and have believed that they were soaring while they merely proceeded at a snail's pace. And so, too, we may be mistaken." And so again, the Tesla optimism is not about being unrealistically optimistic. It's about acknowledging that we may have faults and there may be problems. This is fascinating because Nikola Tesla predicted artificial intelligence with this quote a very long time ago in an era where you wouldn't be thinking that anyone is talking about artificial intelligence or robotics. He said, "I believe that mechanisms can be produced which will act as if possessed of reason." He's not only predicting artificial intelligence, he is saying, in the words before and after this, he's saying that I've built the foundation and other people are going to build on top of what I have created. And this will happen. There's going to be mechanisms that will appear to be possessed of reason. Inanimate objects that can think. We like Nikola Tesla because he played with electricity and did amazing things with it. In San Francisco, a newspaper said, "He made electrical engineers marvel by smilingly passing 1,000,000 volts of electricity through his body, and he showed them how to light a room brilliantly with a simple empty glass tube which he held in his hand or laid on a table without any connecting wires." So here's an illustration of just that was published in 1894. So he made huge bolts of electricity, and I'll just read it. I have produced electrical discharges, the actual path of which from end to end was probably more than 100 feet long, but it would not be difficult to reach lengths 100 times as great. So here Tesla is boasting that he can make electrical discharges that are 10,000 feet long. That's amazing. I don't know if he ever tried this, and he lived in New York City for most of the time, and I think he knew that if he would even attempt, he might burn all of Manhattan and flatten it. So he eventually moved to Colorado. I think he made some big lightning discharges there. But it wasn't bolts of electricity that bothered the hotel staff when he was living in New York City, going from hotel to hotel. You probably all know that when he was living in New York, he went from one hotel to the other, living there. And the staff was very bothered by Nikola Tesla at several of these hotels, and it wasn't anything to do with electrical machines. Does anyone know why hotel staff was bothered when Nikola Tesla was staying there? Does anyone know? Pigeons, maybe, said someone. Thank you, sir. It was indeed pigeons. This was in Time magazine in 1931. In that apartment, he kept a few harmless lightning machines. The swank St. Regis Hotel, where he moved 2 years ago, was no place for such devices. Dr. Tesla contented himself with studying 4 pet pigeons which nested in his roll-top desk. Maids complained, and he moved. So Tesla, Nikola Tesla said that. Oh, no, pardon me. Time magazine published that about Nikola Tesla. Sorry about that. Thank you. So that was in Time magazine, 1931. Nikola Tesla said, "Don't take my pigeons away from me or I'm out of here." Thank you folks for joining us. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Thank you so much. So this is a mysterious quote. People like to speculate about whether he was being truthful or not, or maybe he wasn't allowed to say what he really meant. I don't really have an opinion, and I like to let people speculate as much as they want. But he said, "On this occasion, I would contradict the widely circulated report that the structure was demolished by the government," meaning my United States government. We also know that sometimes Nikola Tesla had troubles with money, but that's also why we like him, because he said, "No desire for material advantages has animated me in all of this work, though I hope for the sake of the continuance of my labors that these will soon follow." So we like Nikola Tesla because he did it for the right reasons. He wasn't motivated for money. He enjoyed science. He enjoyed helping humanity. And so that's why we smile and laugh and feel joy when we think of Nikola Tesla. But coming back to the theme of the evening, his wisdom, I think this is one of his most wise quotes. "We are confronted with portentous problems which cannot be solved just by providing for our material existence, however abundantly." So we've lived in an era recently where this is basically true. We have luxuries that people 150 years ago would die or kill to have. We've got hot water and electricity. We have chocolate and wine in abundance. You know, these are things that throughout history we're really, really lucky to have. And we need more. That's not enough. We need family. We need community. We need brotherly and sisterly love. We need things like that. And he also said peace can only come as a natural consequence of universal enlightenment and the merging of races, which just means living in harmony amongst one another. And we are still far from this blissful realization. So those are genius quotes. And here, this quote is the quote that inspired me to write Tesla's words, because this is a very strange quote. And I don't quite understand what it means. It still puzzles me to this day after years and years and years of rereading it. I don't know what it means. It's very strange. It's probably the strangest quote in the entire canon of history, except for maybe some things that were said about Tsar Nicholas and Rasputin. Those are some very weird things that happened there, supposedly. But Nikola Tesla, particularly when he was a young boy, said that he would see things that are not there, and he would say that these images are thrust in front of him, and this is what he says about it. Sometimes it would even remain fixed in space, though I pushed my hand through it. So that's very mysterious. And it's often said that Nikola Tesla was able to see three-dimensional models in his mind, and this is also true. He describes several different types of visions in his interviews, in his autobiographies. But this quote, and several others that I will show you tonight, suggest that he was seeing things outside of his mind, because if he's pushing his hand through it, well, let's say you cannot push your hand through an image that you're seeing in your mind, right? So this and several others suggest he was seeing external hallucinations, and I think this adds a new layer to his genius, because it's only in the past maybe 15 years or so where society has opened up to this new idea called neurodiversity. And I know most of you speak English as a second language. So neuro, meaning the brain, neuroscience, for example, neurology, neuro, brain, neurodiversity, diversity of brain. So society is beginning to understand that sometimes people's brains work differently, and that is not a negative thing. And clearly in Nikola Tesla's case, it was a positive, because he was not only a genius, he was a super genius. So this is what I wanted to explore in Tesla's words. But we'll come back to that, and we'll discuss that more. First, my book is free for schools. For educational purposes as a PDF, anyone can contact me worldwide, and I will hand it straight over to them. I want students to read this. I want to bring Nikola Tesla into schools where he is not represented, because he is simply the most important historical figure of all time, period. So why is my book good for schools? Why do teachers want it in their classrooms? Why do teachers want it in their classrooms? Why would parents want their children to read it? Why do you want to read it sitting here or watching from home on YouTube? Hello, everyone on YouTube. Why do you want to read it? So I'm just going to very briefly read some reviews of my book. Tesla, in his own words, great read by Elis Osvalt. That's a very simple, standard review, but it's coming from a very interesting individual named John Nosta, who's on the World Health Organization roster of experts. He's on the Google Health Advisory Board, and he's a former chief creative officer at Ogilvy Common Health. If you don't know what Ogilvy is, it's one of the top advertising agencies in the world. It's one of the oldest. Thank you, John Nosta. If you're listening, thank you. John Nosta has a great TED Talk about the nature of genius. I forgot what it's called, but if you type in John Nosta on YouTube, you can find it. And it really resonates and really mirrors a lot of the ideas I'm talking about with Tesla optimism and the nature of genius. So in Australia, a neurosurgeon, Dr. Vujonezovic, said reading of this book was a spiritual experience. He said, I have read a number of books and much besides on Nikola Tesla, and I thought that I knew the man and his work very well. Nothing that I had read, however, had quite brought the spirit, the soul, the mind, the man of itself as this little book. I have read Tesla's autobiography, but somehow this book, closely based on that autobiography with many of Tesla's quotes quoted within, spoke to me like no other. One reviewer said Tesla's words is a short book, but it's a fast read, and yet readers will learn as much about Tesla as they might by a scholarly 600-page biography. I'll tell you why that's true, is because my book is a drama. We understand much better through stories as human beings. We resonate, we remember much better through stories. So if something is a typical nonfiction, it's harder to retain the information. But if it's a story, it sticks with us forever. And this is an important review for why my book is important to bring into schools for free. To paraphrase what's being said here, a Writer's Digest competition, I submitted a very early draft of my book to them. They're a 100-year-old institution in the United States of America. To paraphrase, they said that it's a very well-researched book, that it's very easy to understand for middle schoolers and still very interesting for adults. So my book is based on the original autobiography of Nikola Tesla, as well as dozens and dozens of other resources, primarily primary source materials from Nikola Tesla himself, so that I could understand his thoughts and his vision and his philosophies. So let's talk about that original autobiography. It's very strange. It's disorganized, it's hard to follow, it's dense. And that's odd because Nikola Tesla spoke perfect English, and he wrote dozens of articles and was interviewed dozens of times, and all of his other articles are different. For the most part, they're very easy to understand. He was a very good communicator, so his other articles, they flow. The ideas connect very clearly from one idea to the other. It's very easy to read, except for when he's talking about things of a technical nature, of a scientific nature. That gets a little difficult to understand. He'll start saying copper wire this, aluminum that, Bessemer steel this, mathematics, 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 and you have to skip those paragraphs. Most of us have to skip those paragraphs. But My Inventions is different, and I found evidence published by the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade that these articles were rushed. And when I found that, I just said, I knew it! I knew something was wrong with this. So there's other reasons why it's difficult to understand. It follows some journalism grammar of the time. There's some other reasons we won't go into. But so to make Tesla's words, what I did was I pretended that Nikola Tesla himself had tasked me and hired me to be his ghostwriter. So if you don't know what a ghostwriter is, typically in the political world, whenever there is an autobiography by a governor or a president or what have you, or other people of note, most of the time they're not writing their own books. They hire a ghostwriter. This person interviews them. They collect other information and data, and they basically write the book for that person, and that person publishes it in their own name. So I pretended that Nikola Tesla had come to me and said, Ellis, I need you to be my ghostwriter. And I tried to tell his story in dramatic fashion to make it as easy to follow as possible and easy and entertaining as possible. And I wanted to recreate his essence. So my book is a dramatization of these actual events with actual quotes from Nikola Tesla all throughout. Very briefly, I want to tell you about the time of Nikola Tesla when he was arriving in New York City in 1884. It was an extraordinary time, it really was, but none of us in this room would want to be transformed in this time permanently because we have modern luxuries, and if we spent 2 weeks there, we would be begging to come back. But it was an extraordinary time. Painters were inventing new genres. Van Gogh was cutting off his ear. You know, Houdini was performing magic, and people couldn't believe it. And right when Nikola Tesla landed in New York City in 1884, on the other side of the planet in Russia, the Russian dramatists were inventing modern film drama. And that's extraordinary because film really didn't exist yet. We were not watching movies in the 1880s. I don't have time to go into that because we're going to talk about Nikola Tesla. But I just wanted you to know that because I studied drama at school, and I employed the use of the Stanislavski method to study Nikola Tesla's character. So when I was not typing and writing out my book and editing, when I was away from the laptop, I was doing all sorts of weird things to try to understand Nikola Tesla. And I tried to read all the books that he read so that I could understand his mind, which I was very lucky, because if you're trying to study a character, most of them don't tell you all the books that they read. And Nikola Tesla tells you, I read everything ever written by Voltaire, and he says that he constantly reads the Bible. That was one of the primary things that I did to try to understand his mind, because he constantly keeps saying that whenever he's facing difficult problems in his life, or he has a problem in engineering that he cannot solve, he is returning to the Holy Scripture. And I realized I don't understand the Bible, and it's a very big and complicated book. So I spent a lot of time reading books that Nikola Tesla read so that I could understand his mind and write original dialogue from his perspective. So, quick thank you to the Russians for inventing modern realism in drama. And I'm going to do a quick reading of Tesla's words for you. So this is a dramatization of real events based on his real quotes. And I found a clever way to show you the real quotes, because do you remember this AAP fact check quote that was fake at the very beginning of my presentation? Yes? So I suggested to AAP fact check that that probably came from a drama, and they were able to locate the original drama. So drama has been a source of fake quotes, because whenever there's been a radio drama, a stage drama, television, people remember it, and then they recirculate this as if it is a genuine quote. And very often it's things Nikola Tesla never said or never would have said. So I didn't want to contribute to this problem. I wanted you to know easily to separate what is drama and what was direct quote. So I employed the use of bold. And as you're reading my book, Tesla's Words, anything you see in bold is a direct quote from Nikola Tesla. Most of these are from my inventions, his autobiography, although I did use a few other quotes from other sources. Here's a quick reading. In Tesla's Words, Tesla is speaking to you directly, and he says, "My hallucinations as a child were scary. But these days it does not bother me one bit to see a hallucination. However, that very early trauma from my gifts helped me develop a strong sense of reality that I have difficulty expressing to other people, at least with success. The incessant mental exertion developed my powers of observation and enabled me to discover a truth of great importance." And notice that that is in bold. It is a direct quote. Then Tesla tells us, free will as a concept slowly revealed itself to be an illusion. I realized that all of my thoughts, all of my hopes, all of my cravings were not truly my own, and soon I became aware to my surprise that every thought I conceived was suggested by an external impression. And in the course of time, it became perfectly evident to me that I was merely an automation endowed with the power of movement and responding to the stimuli of the sense organs and thinking and acting accordingly. The practical result of this was the art of telautomatics, which has been so far carried out only in an imperfect manner. So the word robot did not yet exist, so whenever Tesla talks about this, he uses the word telautomatics. That's his word for robotics. And this is another strange way that Nikola Tesla was way ahead of his time, because a lot of PhD neuroscientists will tell you these days that free will is an illusion, that we do not have free will. Personally, I don't have an opinion about this. I'm not qualified to tell you if you have free will. I have no clue. If you want, you can go to YouTube and type in free will argument, and you can spend 100 hours and get nowhere if you'd like. I did that myself, and it just confused me more and more and more the more that I do it. So that's up to you. You can decide if you have free will. I'm not going to tell you. But just to give you a quick overview of their arguments, let's see. Okay, so you all probably looked up when you heard that sound. So this is what Tesla is saying when he said, I was an automation endowed with the power of movement, responding to the stimuli of the sense organs and thinking and acting accordingly. You heard a sound, your brain told you to look at that sound. It wasn't necessarily your choice. That's the idea, that's the argument that the neuroscientists are saying today. So, Tesla's words is a dramatization of real events, and coming back to this quote, sometimes it would even remain fixed in space, though I pushed my hand through it. Thank you, Maya Herman, for being here. I love you. So this is the quote that inspired Tesla's words that I still look at, and I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know what this means. I looked and I found every book that had been printed in the English language about Nikola Tesla and easily available in the United States, and I found no one talking about this. It seems like the last person who talked about these quotes passed away in 1943, and his name was Nikola Tesla. I don't know how that's possible, and I feel like I'm not that smart, so I don't know how it all happened this way. I think that his history is so complicated that when other documentary filmmakers were making their films, they were just too busy investigating other things related to the history of his technology, and this just fell through the cracks because there's so much to talk about when we talk about Nikola Tesla. There really is. He lived an extraordinary life. But let's talk about these air quotes hallucinations. In his autobiography, as well as in the magazine article, The Problem of Increasing Energy, a few other sources he talked about this. So he says he has trouble distinguishing between reality and hallucination. So that's another clue that these are external and not always in his mind. If you have trouble distinguishing between reality, it means there's something here you're seeing, right? Most likely. These were suggested to be strongest when he was a young boy, but they endured his entire lifetime, and he talks about having several different types of visions. So we're going to go through that. One of the most interesting to me is that he says when he closes his eyes, he sees all sorts of colors and moving patterns that are constantly morphing, constantly reshaping, moving from left to right. We'll explore that soon. Especially in moments of distress, he said he sees flashing lights, and he was never able to control these, although he learned how to control the other types of visions he has. Again, I don't know what that means. I'm just trying to use my skills as a storyteller to give you Tesla's words. That's why I named it Tesla's words. So the flashing lights are interesting. I had a friend who was a doctor. She was an MD. She's a doctor in Philadelphia right now, and she was diagnosed with epilepsy when she was a child, and she takes daily medications for it. And she read my book and enjoyed it, and when she got back to me and said she read it, I thought, oh, this is good. Do you think he had epilepsy? Because I'm searching. I don't know what any of this means, and I'm just trying to find answers because it really fascinates me. And so you're a doctor, and you have epilepsy. Surely you will know. Tell me, please, doctor. Do you know what she said? She said, I have no idea. I don't know if he had epilepsy. And that really blew my mind because I figured surely she would have a strong yes or no answer. So I think that shows us that even for things that we already have a label for, there's a lot of variety within those labels, right? So coming back to what he tells us about his visions, his hand quote and several others do suggest that they are external hallucinations. And he uses the word hallucination. I'll show you in a minute too. And strangely enough, he says this all worked out in his benefit. He uses the phrase power of visualization. He said once he was about 17, he was able to sort of learn how to control this, and he could see whatever he wanted to see. And this sounds like a superpower. It's very interesting and confusing, and I don't know what it means. But I have talked to PhD neuroscientists who tell me that this is absolutely possible. And I've also talked to PhDs who say that this is ridiculous, but hopefully I can get them all around the world arguing about this so that they can figure it out, because they're the ones qualified and I am not. So let's talk about the rest of these quotes where he's saying this. He said, "In some instances, I have seen all the air around me filled with tongues of living flame." This quote made it into one of our American documentaries about Tesla, and then they jumped the subject and didn't talk about it, didn't explain it at all, and left you hanging. And you go away from the film not really remembering that this quote is even said. But this is another quote that it suggests that this is external and not simply seeing things in his mind, which again I believe was also happening clearly. But he says he's seeing this in all the air around him. So that tells you it's not in his mind. He's telling you directly this is external. This is where he uses the word hallucination. They certainly were not hallucinations such as produced in diseased and anguished minds, for in other respects I was normal and composed. So to reword this, the message of this quote is to say, although I was hallucinating, I insist I am perfectly sane. I'm aware that these things that I'm seeing are not actually there. And I'm not mentally ill. I'm healthy, and these things are happening to me, and he doesn't really know how to explain it either. He says that he's never found a doctor, a psychologist, a biologist, physiologist that can explain to him what is happening to him. And he seems to be very aware that his subconscious mind is producing these, which is interesting because in Tesla's time, psychologists were really first writing about this new idea of the subconscious mind. It makes me think that perhaps Nikola Tesla was reading some of these psychologists, because he does often say that he read every scientific book he could find. So that's interesting. He says, "In my boyhood, I suffered from a peculiar affliction due to the appearance of images, often accompanied by strong flashes of light, which marred the sight of real objects and interfered with my thought and actions." So in the very beginning, he says, "in my boyhood." So we're going to come back to that. But this is interesting because he said it marred the sight of real objects. And this is also something that suggests it's external. Because if there's a real object there, that would confuse me about whether or not it's real. I feel like if I see something in my head, I feel like I know it's in my head. Maybe not, and maybe I'm wrong, but we'll come back to that. He says, "When a word was spoken to me, the image of the object it designated would present itself vividly to my vision, and sometimes I was quite unable to distinguish what I saw was real or tangible or not." This is another quote which suggests it is external. And let's see, I'll give you an example. So Tesla had a cat when he was a young boy. Help me pronounce this name, and I apologize. I'm learning some basic Serbian phrases. Maciek. Thank you. So if we take some of his words at face value about what he was experiencing, let's say his mother is in the next room saying, "Nikola, where is Maciek?" And perhaps Nikola starts seeing Maciek go on the ground walking from here, and he says, "Mom, Maciek is right here." And then it turns out that this is something that's not actually there, because he says, "When a word was spoken to me, the image of the object it designated would present itself vividly to my vision, and sometimes I was quite unable to distinguish what I saw was tangible or not." So I hope that gives you a direct example of the possibility of what was happening, because one of the things I try to do as a storytelling artist is give you a visual example like this, because he would tell us image, but he wouldn't tell you what the image was that he was putting his hand through, right? "I soon discovered that my best comfort was attained if I simply went on in my vision further and further, getting new impressions all the time, and so I began to travel, of course, in my mind. Every night, and sometimes during the day, when alone, I would start on my journeys. I would see new places, cities, countries, live there. I would meet people and make friendships and acquaintances, and however unbelievable, it is a fact that they were just as dear to me as those in actual life, and not a bit less intense in their manifestations. So the brain is very complicated and powerful. There are more neurons in the brain than there are stars, known stars in the universe, they say. I had an interesting experience where I had a vision recently. It was a dream, and I was staying with my friend, Nikola, and I was jet lagged. I had just come in here from Serbia, and I hadn't slept in about 40 hours, and so I was dying to sleep. I laid my head on the couch for an hour, and I dreamed the same dream 3 times in a row, and it's strange that this happened because 3, right? So Nikola said he's coming back in an hour, and I said, okay, great, I'll take an hour nap, I'll get refreshed, we'll go see Belgrade, can't wait. All right, I fall asleep, and I dreamed that Nikola came back, and I woke up immediately, and I knew that what I had just experienced was a dream. I knew it. Okay? Exact same dream, almost slightly different, happened a little later. Nikola came back home. I woke up and I was like, oh, it was a dream. Then I went to sleep. So obviously my subconscious mind is waiting for Nikola to come back and impressing this upon my brain. The 3rd time I dreamed, Nikola came home. He came into the living room, said hello to me, grabbed his laptop, and left the room. Then later I woke up and I thought, where is Nikola? And then Nikola walked through the door and said, are you ready to go? And I said, you were just here. So the brain is powerful. I can't explain dreams. I can't explain any of this, but it's infinitely interesting. I think anyone who has any speck of scientific interest and curiosity would be interested to know more about this, and I hope that I can help the world explore this more. So he says, this I did constantly until I was about 17, when my thoughts turned seriously to invention. Then I observed to my delight that I could visualize with the greatest facility. I needed no models, drawings, or experiments. That's a pretty famous quote. You've probably heard it. But giving all the other quotes that he was just saying before this, I think it maybe gives us new context. We don't really know what he was saying. He's not here for us to ask him follow-up questions, and we only have about 12 quotes to go on, so it's very mysterious. And I believe him. I don't have any reason to think that he's making this up, and I just don't see any reason not to take a genius for his words. He says, when I was 12 years old, I first succeeded in banishing an image from my vision by willful effort, but I never had any control over the flashes of light to which I referred. So I don't know exactly what he meant by this, but I think the external hallucinations is what he is talking about, I think, when he says he's able to banish these. But he says the flashes of light never quite became under control. And he says their intensity, instead of diminishing, again, he's talking about the uncontrollable flashing lights in this quote, instead of diminishing, increased with time, and seemingly attained a maximum of when I was about 25 years old. So he says these luminous phenomenon still manifest themselves from time to time, is when a new idea opening up possibilities strikes me. So he's 62 years old when he's saying this, and he's 62 years old and he's saying this still happens. He's saying, of course, it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it still happens to me at the age of 62. This is another quote that tells us that he was experiencing something different and different than what is typical from what most of us experience, not just when he was a boy, but in his entire life. So he says, when I close my eyes. So he's 62 years old when he's writing this. Notice the verb tense. He doesn't say, when I was a boy and I closed my eyes. He doesn't say closed. He says, when I close my eyes. I am 62 years old. He says, when I close my eyes, I invariably observe first a background of very dark and uniform blue. That's very normal. I close my eyes, I see a bluish black nothingness. Maybe I see some green dots from the light, and then they kind of fade away, and then it goes to black, and I'm looking at the back of my eyelids. There's nothing there. But when he does this, he says, in a few seconds, this field becomes animated with innumerable scintillating flakes of green, arranged in several layers and advancing towards me. Then there appears, to the right, a beautiful pattern of two systems of parallel and closely spaced lines at right angles from one another, in all sorts of colors, with green, yellow, and gold predominating. Immediately thereafter, the lines grow brighter, and the whole is thickly sprinkled with dots of twinkling light. That's amazing. I imagine that that's amazing from my perspective, but I also imagine perhaps from his perspective that that might have been difficult to deal with. And it's mysterious. And again, I don't know what this means. But Maya knows. I think all these quotes, when we look at it, I hope this gives us new perspective so that we can empathize with Nikola Tesla and why he maybe did some things that don't make sense. So how could someone who is so rational do so many things that are irrational? Why would you circle a building 3 times before you enter? Why would you order 18 napkins at a restaurant? Dr. Cypher, who, if you don't know, he wrote the best traditional biography on Nikola Tesla, certainly one of the best, and very important for helping the United States of America know about who Nikola Tesla was. He says supposedly when he talks about Nikola Tesla doing these things, because there's a little bit of a lack of direct evidence. I think all the evidence we have is a little bit indirect, but we think Tesla did these things. And it seems very likely, we have reports that he probably did these things, and I think this helps us empathize with why he behaved this way. So he detested pearls and gold jewelry, silver, shiny objects. I think this all puts it into context for us to help us understand why. I don't know exactly what was happening in his brain in these moments, but he probably saw reflective jewelry. Maybe it gave him a headache. Maybe it gave him a stomach ache. Maybe it made him dizzy. Maybe it incited seeing flames in the air like he was speaking about earlier. I'm not exactly sure, but this helps us give a window into the possibilities of why. So back to Tesla's character and his genius. It's often said that Nikola Tesla is crazy. A lot of people who criticize him say, Tesla was crazy, Tesla was crazy, he was a visionary, he was an idealistic person with stupid ideas that were never accomplished, and they say terrible, awful, mean things that are not true. So I want to show you one of his craziest quotes and show you how it's actually genius. He wanted to create abundant electrical energy for the world. And he said, if we do this, we could create lakes and rivers for motive purposes. And we could transform arid deserts into fertile land. That sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? Surely there's no way we can take a desert and make it into a garden. But guess what? Humanity is succeeding in this already. So the People's Republic of China has been working on a project for the last 15 years or so. You can Google cloud seeding, maybe Google cloud seeding Time magazine China. Google these words, you'll find dozens of articles about this. I don't have time to explain it, but basically they put some sort of silver in the air. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of teamwork, a lot of workforce. It takes a lot of planning, and sometimes they fail and they wasted millions of dollars. And it's not a magic, but it's not like they have a magic button where they can control the weather, you know? But in the past 15 years, inch by inch, slowly, bit by bit, every year a little bit more, the People's Republic of China has been succeeding to turn their 2 major deserts slowly into more fertile land because they have a lot of people to feed. So you can look that up if you like. I don't have time to go into it because we're going to get back to Nikola Tesla. In the United States, universities and government programs have also been studying this technique with very positive results, so you can look that up too. Google it whenever you get home if you like. So I was recently elected as vice president of the Tesla Science Foundation, and I want to welcome all of you, every single one of you, and you at home watching on YouTube. I want to welcome you to the Tesla Science Foundation. You are all honorary members, and we need your help. So the Tesla Science Foundation is a volunteer organization. I volunteer my time. We have a network of beautiful people from all over the world who volunteer their time. And we work towards common goals to help preserve the legacy of Nikola Tesla and help bring Nikola Tesla into schools where he is not represented. So because you are new members, I'm going to read you our mission statement so that you can help us. We need your help. If you're listening at home, we especially need graphic designers, animators, language translators, honestly, any skill you have, creative or technical, we need your help. You can reach out to me, Elis Osvalt @gmail.com. You can reach out to me. If you only have 2 hours per month, that's a lot, and that can help out a lot. So here's our mission statement. Number 1, we exist to preserve historical landmarks concerning Nikola Tesla around the globe. So we do this. In about 2008 or 2009, the Tesla Memorial Society, which came before us and no longer exists, they fought tooth and nail to put the tiniest little plaque on the wall at the New Yorker Hotel so that people could visit and know that they are in a place where Nikola Tesla spent the last 10 years of his life. It was just the tiniest little plaque. It was nothing. Before that, you could go there. There was no indication, nothing. Nothing was there. So they put their foot in the door for us, and Tesla Science Foundation has gradually, piece by piece, donated framed art, bust statues, other things, so that when you go and you pay to stay at the New Yorker Hotel, you know exactly where you are. And we've also built this little museum in the bottom of the basement. The majority of these pieces were donated by the Tesla Science Foundation as well. And this statue of Nikola Tesla's face, Tesla Science Foundation has donated dozens of these statues all around the world in places that are significant to Serbian heritage or Nikola Tesla's history. Close up, that's what our museum looks like downstairs. We hold a conference every year on January 14th. You're all invited. We live stream this, so if you're here in Serbia, tune in the evening before you're maybe going out into a party. As you're getting dressed, it's probably going to be around that time, so as you're getting ready to go out for your celebration, tune in, listen to us in the background. If you'd like, come visit us, stay in the New Yorker Hotel, and come to our conference. We're happy to see you. It's going to be really exciting. We have a great lineup this year. You don't want to miss it. So back to our mission statement. Number 2, we exist to preserve the legacy of the scientist and inventor in educational settings through our international Nikola Tesla clubs and bring this essential history into the classrooms to enable growing young minds to reach their fullest potential as the next generation of innovators to grapple with the staggering problems facing the 21st century. Now, that's a word full, but basically we want to help education. to put it more mildly. So we have these international Nikola Tesla Clubs programs. This is an after-school program. So what we realized was that it's impossible to change curriculum. There's no chance that that's going to work. So we are going through the side door to get Nikola Tesla into schools. And in addition to this, Nicola Lonchar and I co-authored a play script, a drama script. About a dozen schools are performing this around the world in the next upcoming season. It's an educational children's play that's also a comedy. It's really funny, it's really fun, and this is another way that we bring Nikola Tesla into schools where he is currently not represented. I can't wait to see this performance in Philadelphia, and I'm very happy, very pleased that we are doing this. All right, our mission statement number 3, and these are perpetual goals of the Tesla Science Foundation. These are never satisfied. We're always doing this. We exist to support and recognize individuals who work towards our common goals in the spirit of Tesla for philanthropic efforts, advancements in science, education, culture, artistic endeavors, and for the common good of humankind. Okay, so we've talked about everything important that I want you to know for this evening, so now let's have a little bit of fun. Let's talk about aliens. Nikola Tesla spoke to the press quite often about aliens, and again, I want to show you that he wasn't crazy. He wasn't saying anything that out of the norm. And in fact, I'm going to teach you some astronomy history to show you that in the 1880s, a lot of people were talking about this. This was just on the mind of people. So Nikola Tesla, when he talks about aliens, he's really just commenting on current events. Does that make sense? So a lot of people were talking about aliens, and he's putting in his 2 cents about what everybody else is talking about. So raise your hand if you understand why Pluto is not a planet. Oh, okay, well, I'll tell you. So an astronomer named Percival Lowell built an observatory in Arizona, and they discovered Pluto. It was thought to be a planet, and then closer towards our time, in more recent years, we've realized there's just an asteroid belt at the very end of the solar system, and Pluto is just one of the many asteroids within this belt. So that's why it's no longer considered a planet, because we didn't know that this asteroid belt was here, and when we first discovered Pluto, we thought, oh, a new planet. It's just an asteroid within a larger asteroid belt. So here's the history behind this, and here's the history behind why people were talking about aliens in Tesla's time. An Italian astronomer in 1888 was observing Mars, and he saw big markings all on the surface of Mars. He drew this illustration here. You see all these markings? This is Mars. And he said, my goodness, these are monolithic structures. These must be aqueducts or something. Somebody must have built this. What is this? This is worthy of investigation. There must be alien life if somebody built these. So this is what the Italian astronomer supposed when he found this. Roughly 6 years later in America, Percival Lowell built the Lowell Observatory, which he did this so that he could observe Mars to get to the bottom of this, and he ended up discovering Pluto, which led to the discovery of the asteroid belt, the Kuiper belt. And this is a funny thing that happens a lot of times in science, where they set out to do one thing and they succeed in something completely different. So Lowell does this, and roughly 15 years later, in France, they built a brand new shiny telescope. So this was the best telescope that existed in 1909. It was brand spanking new, and the French astronomer looked in his telescope, and he said, we're going to get to the bottom of alien life on Mars. Oh, it was just an optical illusion. These lights, these lines were never there. There's no aqueducts on Mars. There's no monolithic structures. But In the 1880s, people didn't know that, and people were very curious. So Tesla chimes in, because everybody else is talking about it, and he says, ... but let us hope ... And again, this is the idea of optimism. He's just being an optimistic guy. But let us hope Mars is not a cold grave, but the abode of happy and intelligent creatures from whom we may learn. So if there's supposedly big aqueducts on Mars, that means humans couldn't do this. So whatever's living on Mars to build these things, they must be much more advanced than we are. And if they are much more advanced than we are, surely they are mentally advanced as well, and they are past this phase where they're still fighting over wars and violence and nonsense, and they'll teach us science. So this is Tesla's idea. He's like, I don't know if there's aliens, but I hope so. So he's just an optimistic guy. He's very grounded on this topic. You can find other quotes about him speaking on aliens and every other subject under the sun in my Instagram, Tesla's Words, at Tesla's Words on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And to my knowledge, I am the only Nikola Tesla quotes page that also tells you the source of the quote, which is very important because, like I said, there's many fake quotes out there. So please follow me on social media. Signore Marconi said the same thing as Tesla about 20 years later, so you may know a little bit after this whole Mars phenomenon where people thought there might be alien life there. Tesla thought he heard signals while he was in Colorado, and he said, this might be aliens. And I want to again stress that he was very grounded when he spoke about this. He always put a button on it, and he said, I don't really know. Maybe this is aliens, but I don't know. But it's worth looking into because it's that close. Why not? So Tesla is a rational scientist. He's not worried about what people are thinking about him. He's not worried about the social constructs. He's just a scientist. He wants to know, is this true or not? And he's not thinking about what people are, you know, whatever. But there's a double standard here because Marconi said the exact same thing, and people don't seem to point to Marconi and say, oh, he was crazy, he was so crazy. And there's always a double standard when it comes to Tesla, and I just can't for the life of me understand why. Because every second of every day, we are benefiting from Nikola Tesla. We have electricity here, we have wireless technology here, we have these in our pockets, everything is built by a foundation of his technology. So people, whatever. Anyway, back to Tesla's optimism. He was deeply religious, and his thoughts were filled with the Christ throughout his days. And I think this is part of his optimism. If you think a higher power, if you have faith in a higher power that is looking out for you, I think this is psychologically very helpful. Even non-believers will say they wish that they could believe because it would make them happier. And even non-believers kind of admit that this is a psychological advantage, right? So I want to recommend other authors of Nikola Tesla. There's been many great books written about him. I definitely recommend Father Oliver Subotic as well as Dr. Mark Seifer. They wrote some excellent books. Maya Herman is here visiting us today. She wrote a book about Tesla. Oh, so is our friend here. Say hello to everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Like, I think it's loud. You want me to sing?
Tell them about your...
Yeah, I'm Daniele Meucci. I realized this graphic novel about Nikola Tesla. He's in the bookstores. Maybe you saw it around.
What's the name of it?
Nikola Tesla, the man who defined the future. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maya Herman, what's the name of your book on Tesla?
Who was Nikola Tesla?
Who was Nikola Tesla by Maya Herman. So there's a lot of great books by Nikola Tesla about Nikola Tesla. I recommend several other authors. I'm not the only authority. There's a lot of terrible books about him, so I'm happy to recommend other good authors. This is the audiobook. I performed the audiobook and recorded it in a place where Nikola Tesla used to live and work, in the Radio Waves building in New York City. I couldn't believe it. I was so happy to do this, and while I just have the opportunity and while I'm here, I want to apologize to the Serbian people for my Serbian accent because it's not very good. It's okay in some points, it's okay and not so good in others. The British, the Americans, they'll think it's great, and they do think it's great. Don't tell them. So, we have an energy crisis in Europe right now. I just recently read a story that they're going to turn off the Eiffel Tower every night, and that's terrible. Nikola Tesla envisioned a world where we have abundant energy. He said that nations fight wars over resources, and he said energy is a resource just like any of these others. He said maybe we can build a very large step towards world peace if we create abundant energy for everyone to share. It's one less thing that we have to fight over. He said power is our mainstay, the primary source of our many-sided energies. With sufficient power at our disposal, we can satisfy most of our wants and offer a guarantee for safe and comfortable existence to all, except perhaps those who are the greatest criminals of all, the voluntary idle. So Europe is at war again, and that's very sad. And boy, we could use wireless abundant energy right about now. Maybe that would help a little bit. Tesla Science Foundation has commissioned a lot of really good art. These are a couple of my favorites. On the right here, Tatiana Basova. She's our friend who lives in Russia. We love Tatiana. It's a great piece of artwork. I'm not sure who the artist is on the left there, but I really love that one. Check out this film, TESLINE REČi. So this is a cross-cultural event. This is a Serbian event. This is an American event. So I'm going to end with something Serbian, and I'm going to end with something American. As an American, I'm often ignorant of geography. So it took me a while to understand how and why Nikola Tesla was Serbian, because there's several reasons, and early biographies mistakenly reported that he may have been Greek and said things to suggest this. Yes, and as well as Austrian-Hungarian. So the New York Times even said he was Austrian-Hungarian. They misreported where he was from. And this makes sense because at the time, this is where the Austro-Hungarian border was. So there was some misreporting about who he is and where he's from. And this was all very confusing to me as an idiot American. But Nikola Tesla himself cleared this up for me, because whenever he spoke to newspapers, they asked him where he was from, and he said, "I am Serbian." So here's a quote from Nikola Tesla at the end of an interview. The interviewer said, "Wait, Nikola Tesla, before you go, where are you from? What is your ethnicity?" And Nikola Tesla said, "I am Serbian, not from the kingdom of Serbia, but from the outskirts, near Montenegro." All right, and to end with something American, this is what money looked like in Nikola Tesla's time. This is a 1 ounce of silver coin. Printed on it says E pluribus unum. This is still on some of our money, but much less than it was 100 years ago. This is Latin, E pluribus unum. It's our American motto. From the many, one. Coming back to what Nikola Tesla said, we are all one. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy the book. And we will open the floor up for questions. Any questions? The questions can be about Nikola Tesla. Questions can be about just me and my life in New York City, or how I'm liking Serbia. Anything you want to ask, I'm happy to answer. Questions about Tesla Science Foundation. Yes, madame. Microphone's coming to you.
So a lot of the things you do are is volunteer work, and I was wondering what is your full-time job?
Oh, how do I support myself?
Yes.
Okay. I am a freelance event manager. So people come to me and ask me my availability and say, hey, this weekend, are you free? And then they give me a place to show up, and then I manage staff. Sometimes these are people I've never met before. Sometimes they're people that I've worked with for years. And I make sure the staff is keeping the party organizer pleased.
Okay, thank you. And what did you study originally? Because you became a writer, and I was wondering.
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, I studied drama at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, not to be confused with the University of Alabama. Different school, very close. But one of my professors is a PhD in drama. She got her master's in Slavic studies, and she's from Bulgaria. So Balkan peoples are responsible for educating me, and partially responsible for my book.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions? And by the way, before you leave, I want you to see this silver coin and put it in your hand, because it's really cool and everyone should experience it. And I also have plenty of books here. Don't leave without a copy of Tesla's words. Any questions? Questions about Tesla Science Foundation? Questions about me? Questions about Tesla? No? Perfect. You at home listening, we need your help at Tesla Science Foundation. Come contact us to volunteer. Check out my website, teslaswords.com. You can buy the book anywhere you like, on Amazon or Book Depository. It is free for educators. If you are an educator, please contact me. I want to give you a free PDF for your students. And that's it. Thank you. Good night.